afternoon. So we shall be starting in next 2 to 3 minutes, waiting for a few more audiences to join us. And thank you for joining in. Just 2 minutes, we'll start the session. Thank you. Very good afternoon. Myself, Ekta Dubey. So before I start, I just wanted to understand that, am I audible?
Yes, I think you are.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. There might be a little disturbance because of the construction, but otherwise I'm loud, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. So hello all, a very good afternoon. Myself, Ekta Dubey, and on behalf of the Branalytics team and our partners, Lead Squared and OzoneTel, we welcome you all and thank you for being part of our webinar, which is Breaking Barriers to Patient Engagement, Imperatives for Internal and External Communication in Healthcare. So before we start the webinar, there are a few guidelines that I would like to highlight and make you people aware of. I request all the attendees to be on mute when the speakers are taking the session, and also please switch off your videos. We are going to encourage Q&A after the panel discussion is over and the speakers have shared their insights. The attendees can ask their questions to any speaker after the panel. The guidelines are, you need to raise your hands, unmute yourself, no need to on the video, introduce yourself and put your question to our speakers. Now to start with, I would like to introduce our partners. Lead Squared, recognized by Deloitte, Frost & Sullivan, TrustRadius, NASSCOM, and many others. Lead Squared is a SaaS solution provider helping 2,000 plus enterprises across 19 countries to drive sale efficiency at scale. We have OzoneTel, which was founded in 2007 by an experienced team of technologists and entrepreneurs. The full stack customer experience software was built from the ground up to solve the practical problems that keep call centers worldwide and making the most of their communication platform. In this webinar, we have invited the healthcare fraternity, where we'll be talking about how effective management of internal and external communication within your organization can ensure continuous patient engagement for a high quality healthcare system. Requesting the person to be on mute, please. Sorry. Yeah. So now I would like to introduce a panel. We have an interesting panel today, and happy to introduce our speakers. We have Mr. Santosh Marathe, Regional CEO, Western Region, Apollo Hospital. We have Mr. Dr. Kanal Prabal Dev, Head of Operations with Aster Labs. Ms. Garima Swani, Co-founder, Pristine Care. Mr. Sudhanshu Mishra, VP Business Development with Ozontel. Mr. Vinit Kumar Tiwari, AVP of Sales with Lead Square, and having a wonderful moderator, Ms. Garima Gayatri from Ozontel. So thank you, our audience, for taking out your time today and listening, going to be a part of this interesting webinar, and all the thought leaders for taking out your time and who are going to share lovely insights. Over to you, Garima. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ekta, for the introduction, and thank you once again, all our guests, for joining us and making time for this important conversation today. Before we begin, just a few quick notes for our audience. We would like this session to be as interactive as possible. So we hope to see some interesting questions coming up from you in the chat section. And towards the end of the session or during the session, we'll be taking some questions for our speakers. And I also request you all to keep your video and audio on mute while the speakers are having the conversation. So before we begin, once again, I welcome you all. Thank you so much for making time. And if there's any connectivity issue at the end of any of our speakers, please bear with us for some time. We'll resume as soon as possible. So without a doubt, all healthcare organizations strive for one goal. That's improving the health and well-being of patients. And one of the ways to look at this is by improving patient engagement. But how do we do that? What does engagement mean in an industry that is centered around human lives? And is engagement the same thing as experience? If we dive into studies and reports that suggest that when patients are actively involved in the healthcare journey, it could lead to better outcomes. But ensuring continuous interactions between patients and healthcare providers across the continuum of care is a challenge. And what outcomes are we looking at is also dependent on what do the patients really want? What are their expectations from healthcare providers? And the side of the story is that no
Hi, I think Garima. Yeah. Yes, Garima.
Yeah. Where exactly did I lose the internet? I'm not sure.
We lost you for a while, Garima.
Just for a few seconds, we lost you. Last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry. It's raining very heavily here. So, there are some issues because of that. So please bear with me.
Ironically, our subject is technology.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying that, another side of the story is that no matter how far the technology takes us, nothing can really replace the value of human interaction. And in today's discussion, we'll focus on the potential of communication in healthcare in driving increased patient engagement and an enhanced inclusive patient experience that brings together the best of both worlds, digital and human touch. And on this note, I open the keynote question for all of you. What are some of the biggest challenges you perceive with respect to healthcare communication? Where exactly do you perceive the roadblocks when it comes to patient engagement? And the session is open for all. Anyone can open it for us. And I'll request Anshu, if you would like to open the session for us, that would.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Garima. I'm happy to react to that. It's always a difficult situation. It's as more and more technology is seeping into our world and our lives in every possible aspect, there are certain areas where you still need the human touch, you need the empathy, you need the understanding of another human being. And patient care and healthcare is one such area. While you can automate and bring in technology into a whole lot of aspects of healthcare and patient care, you still need a human being to stand next to the patient and give him or her the support that they need, the emotional support, the psychological support. And I think that's where somewhere the right balance is required. While healthcare can benefit greatly from technology, it is benefiting, of course, it's making our treatment, our life expectancy, our healthcare systems, our patient records, everything getting automated so well. But when it comes to dealing with patients, along with technology, you also need the human touch, because at the end of it, it's a human being who's the at the core of this whole patient care here.
Right, Sudhanshu. And I think empathy is a very important term when we are talking about an industry that is centered around human lives. And on that note, I think Dr. Prabal can take us from here and share some insights with us.
Yeah, thank you, Garima. I agree with Sudhanshu that we are in healthcare where the central dogma is the healing touch. Okay, and somewhere as we are moving ahead, we find that with excessive digitization, automation, various other things coming in between, and as we just experienced, there are certain gaps which happens in IT, but whenever there's an urgency or the patient wants to reach the doctor or a healthcare worker, and there's an IT glitch or something, there's a lot of worries, a lot of apprehensions. So at the end of the day, what we look forward is that healing touch of a doctor. And that is somewhere whatever we can introduce technology, we should not move away. But what my concern is that somewhere we are not having it correct. And somewhere we are moving away into too much of automation. And the central person who's responsible for the patient care is distanced from the patient himself.
That's a very important point that you mentioned, Dr. Prabal. Thank you so much for that. Moving on, Dr. Garima, what would your thoughts be on this? Because Pristine Care has really set the bar high when it comes to, simplifying the entire surgical experience for the end users and patients. How would you, describe the gap that exist in patient engagement and experience, and what exactly you are focusing on as an organization? I think you're on mute, Dr. Garima.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me today. It's a great platform. Happy to meet all of you here. First of all, like telling you about what I broadly feel that there exists gap. I think broadly, if I have to divide it, there are two things which are very important. One is the real time knowing what your patient is going through. So real time update about the patient is something which we never get to know. Second thing, I feel very important, which most of the technologies are coming up with, but the doctor or healthcare provider communication is something which I find is missing a lot, right? So we should know what our doctor has advised. Our nurses should be updated immediately. So most of things like I have worked in healthcare myself, being a doctor, I have seen that gap, the real time, like what my patient is exactly feeling, what exactly they need, what is the status, what are the real time vitals. I think these are the major gap from the patient side. And from like if I have given some order, has it like really gone to my nursing staff? Is it like something like, have my patient got those injections if I have ordered something? I think these are the two broad things which I think exist, and we should look forward into it. And at Pristine, I think when we started Pristine started with the thought that we have to solve the journey from end to end, right? And we figured out a lot of gaps in it, and we are working towards it. And technology has actually helped us in doing it.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Garima. And requesting our audience to please keep your videos switched off, because that might confuse the other people, because we are trying to put the spotlight on the speakers, not the audience right now. but we do appreciate your participation. Please keep your videos and audio on mute while the session is on. We'll invite questions towards the end of the discussion. Moving on, Mr. Santosh, Garima pointed out a very beautiful point that, you know, being exactly in the shoes of the patient is something that is, you know, missing, or something that the industry needs to work towards, because we're ultimately talking about an industry that is very humane in essence, right? So what are your thoughts when it comes to the gap that exists in patient engagement and communication?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite. And I think it's an interesting question. And last 2 years, typically in COVID scenario, I think the importance of communication has been more overtly felt. And I think all healthcare providers, including Apollo, have really stood to the occasion, devised unique ways of reaching out and enhancing both engagement and communication. And I think one of the big change in healthcare, what we are seeing, is a spectrum of data capturing. I think big data, as they keep on saying, there is a host of data sets which are getting captured. Lot of structured, unstructured data is coming into the ecosystem. And most of the healthcare providers are adopting that healthcare ecosystem, that kind of data, which is being put to use for consultant engagement. IT-enabled tool, AI tools are something which obviously Apollo has been on the forefront always in terms of adopting technology and AI tools in terms of this thing. As you rightly said, Garima, most of the healthcare initiatives are human-centric in nature. So having consistency and reducing the variability of care is very, very important from that point of view. Few of the elements which Apollo has crafted and done quite wonderfully well is patient support initiatives, where we embark on the journey of enhanced care and communication being given to the, not only to the patient, but their families also. So that consistency of care is done. Participative care is another thing which we are very proud about. I think at periodic intervals, that communication is very, very critical and important. And not only the patient care providers to patient, but also within the care providers. The internal communication, also the culture of safety that we talk about, is very, very important to set the tone within the organization so that the consistency of care in the care continuum journey is maintained all across the board. And definitely IT has been very helpful and resourceful in adopting to most of the IT-enabled approaches in giving solutions which are more within the reach element of people and having consistency. I think these 2 or 3 are important aspects of communication and engagement.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are seeing definitely the patient-provider relationship is evolving, and data and technology is at the heart of it. And moving on, Vineet, what are your thoughts on this? How would you, define the gaps that currently exist in healthcare communication, and how exactly are you looking at them right now?
Thanks a lot, Garima, for inviting me, and thanks a lot, Mr. Santosh, Colonel Dev, and Sudhanshu ji, and Dr. Garima, for your wonderful insights on this. I completely, so I'm trying to build my thoughts onto the liners from all of you, and I'll try to break this communication. Where does it start, and what are the components of it? So in healthcare, I mean, communication is very important, and 2 angles to it. Okay, one is the human angle, and the other is the system or the technology angle. Now, coming to where it starts. So communication starts with an inquiry. So first time, a patient who is raising an inquiry to a healthcare service provider, it starts from there. Now, the patient or the inquiry is always time sensitive. It has to be addressed immediately. And it is addressed by a human being. So empathetic touch, as all of you mentioned, but system helps us in terms of automating to ensure that within that time, the turnaround time to respond to an inquiry should be reduced. Or it can be, say, a few minutes to say 30 minutes kind of. Okay, it's within 30 minutes the response should be given to the customer because he's running on a time sensitive. So there it starts. Now, once the inquiry is kind of received, captured into the healthcare service provider or into the ecosystem, then the patient or the person who has raised inquiry would be coming to the premise, or he will go for a video consultation or online consultation or in-person consultation. So there, all that human touch is needed, right? And to ensure that the human touch is also kind of sensitive and intelligent, we need to understand everything about all the information, the relevant information about that person. So systems and technology help us to ensure that we kind of put all that into a record room, or that information is available to, like, for the call center guys, for the counselor, for even for the doctors. We feel all that information, and this is recorded. So how technology can help seamlessly capture all this information. And if it is fragmented, it is a gap.
Right.
If it is fragmented, it is a gap. The third is, so as okay, Mr. Santosh mentioned, that a lot of investment has been done, and healthcare is like overwhelming from the perspective of digitalization. And the only intent is to ensure that the technology help to serve the patient or the customer better. So whatever the adoption, the technology we bring into the system, if we are not able to personalize it to the level of the end, like patient who is raising the inquiry, then it's a gap.
Right.
If these systems are not integrated together to pass on a great experience, empathetic experience to the patient, it is a gap.
Right.
So like, this is my understanding about what are the gaps, in terms of communication in the healthcare ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Right. Requesting Ms. Manshil to please switch off your video. Yeah, thanks, Manshil. So yes, there is a layer of technology, but how do we move from personalization to hyper-personalization, which is, at the core of the conversation right now? This is something we need to look at during this conversation. And on that note, I would pose my question to Dr. Prabal. The question is, how do you make it easier for patients to reach out to you? Because that is the first level of interaction that the patient will have with your lab, for instance. So how are you simplifying that process for them? How are you making sure that the patients stick around with you throughout their entire healthcare journey, and the experience overall is so wholesome that they do not hesitate to, come back again and again to you? How exactly are you working towards creating a holistic healthcare experience?
I understand, because today the focus is more on the patient. And when I see from the diagnostic or from the corporate diagnostic lab perspective, a lot of focus is on B2C, where directly to the patient, the focus is on the patient. And COVID also has taught us that, yes, how do we reach to the patient and engage them suitably? And today, as we are discussing, I would say that the thin line between hospital and hospitality is becoming thinner by the day. So, and hospitals are more into hospitality rather than the hospitality industry. Okay, so with that, a focus from the diagnostic lab perspective, we look at it in three parts. One is the pre-analytical phase, analytical, and post-analytical. In the pre-analytical phase, we generally...
Ashish, can you please mute your audio?
Yeah.
Requesting once again, audience, please keep your audio and video on mute. It might just disturb the conversation. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Prabal.
Yes. So first of all, at a pre-analytical, how can a patient, like if somebody wants to decide, or wants to do a test, has been advised to do a test, or wants to do a healthcare checkup, what will they do? They'll reach out today. The best thing is to Google out labs near me. Okay, so somewhere that is, we have to have an omni-channel presence. Okay, and with a so powerful social media and everything, there's always a way to reach out to patients, and whatever are different offers, schemes, and whatever are there, we can sensitize the patient and reach out to them. But that is not enough. There might be some patients who are coming to us frequently. Okay, and for them, we know that they do a test at a particular frequency. So we have a list of that. We call them also. From our caller base, we call them also. They like that personal touch. It is not always an automation, or somebody reaches the website, there's a bot chat, or there's something. So patients might not get the required information, or they might call up the call center And if the call center person is not sensitized or rather empathetic to the situation, it might not be to our advantage at the end of the day. So from that perspective, we try to reach out personally also once we find that, yes, there has been a query on a social media or something. We reach out proactively to the person and try to find out the need. Okay, so one is that. Secondly is, again, if there's a home collection query, and one of the most important things which we learned during COVID also, frequently there can be delays. An appointment is there, frequently there can be delays. And if we do not reach out to the patient that, okay, there's a delay for a certain reason, they get quite upset that whether somebody is coming or not coming. There's a lot of apprehension. So out there, if I leave it to my team or somebody, a call center, it really message doesn't go. So that is very important to reach out to the patient. Everybody is understanding today. They understand that there can be a delay. The person going for home collection can also fall sick. So that is there. Now, during the, once the person comes here, that is, from that time, the analytical phase starts off. Right at the, reception itself, we try to explain what are the tests, see what is the prescription, we see whether that tests, whatever they are asking for, are correct or not, or if something can be advised to them, we reach out to them. We sensitize them at that stage. Then before phlebotomy also, we explain to them what is the process, what to expect after phlebotomy, what to do, what not to do. And as we're talking to them, we're actually observing them real time, whether they are having any, adverse effects during phlebotomy or anything, or after post phlebotomy, any adverse effect. We see that they are stabilized and then they leave. In case they have any queries about the test or the report, we definitely explain to them, because that is one of the major thing, that if we make them a part of the discussion, okay, part of the process, we have a lot of good bond building between, and that is where the human touch comes up, especially with a diagnostic lab. That is the point when we see the patient, okay, and it really builds up the bond. And subsequently, once the test is done, from Astrolab, we have a very nice concept that we offer the patient, that we call them up, that this is your report. Your report would reach by email or by SMS. But in case you have any queries or any clarifications or anything you want to discuss the report, there's a doctor to discuss it. And that is very important today, because in medical practice, everybody looks for a second opinion.
Right.
In today's, when wellness is a big segment, people come themselves for tests. So they do not know how to interpret, where to go for a interpretation. A diagnostic value can be slightly off the normal, okay, and it can cause a lot of apprehension. But if somebody is there to talk to them, explain to them, and that a doctor, okay, it makes a big impact. And in case something else is to be advised, okay, according to the need, they can be advised suitably. So this is how overall we try to make patient participate in the entire diagnostic process.
Right, right. And I think that's a very important point, that the patients need to be included. They need to feel that they are part of that journey.
Exactly.
And they have some sort of control over the entire process. And I think you have beautifully articulated what a broken patient journey should not look like. So moving on, Dr. Garima, I would like to ask you, what does a broken patient journey look like to you?
So I myself is a gynecologist, right? I have worked in different hospitals, like government, private. I've also done my own practice. I was of the habit of talking to a lot of patients. When I was even in my own practice, I used to take feedback about myself, like what you like, what you didn't like. So taking feedback actually helped. What I figured out that there were common gaps when the patients were trying, like Mr. Vineet also said that patients really feel challenged to book an appointment with the doctor. So that was something which came common to many patients, like how to book an appointment. If they're calling a hospital, might not be able to connect with the right person to book an appointment. So booking the appointment was a big challenge. Wait time to a doctor was a big challenge, right? Suppose the consultation happens, and post consultation, if the doctor has advised a surgery or maybe admission, and the insurance needs to be done, to go about it was like something which most of the patients were not aware about. Now, when they have to come for the surgery or they need to get admitted, the fear in the patient's mind or the fear in the family mind was like tremendous. So coming to hospital was a big challenge. Then during the course, like when they are in the hospital, they don't know what is next, because as we are now discussing that communication is a big challenge. So they were not knowing what exactly is going to be the next thing in their journey in the hospital. Now, at the time of discharge, mostly we all know a lot of hospitals faces this issue of discharge delays. So when is it happening? When will my approval come in? All these were like the patient side issues. Now, once they have got discharged, how is their recovery going on? When they have to come for the follow-up, who to connect to like so that they can book their follow-up with the doctors. I think these were the things which I personally figured out amongst different patients. And when we had to start Pristine, these were the problem statements which we kept in front of us. And three of us used to discuss it every day, that these are the problem statements wherein we have to work forward. And that is something which we started Pristine with. And that is something which Pristine is trying to solve means we are trying it and solving it today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I believe that staying patient-centric in itself is a very huge challenge as the organization scales up. How have you managed to work towards that? If you could elaborate a bit about that part, because scaling up is one part of the story, and then keeping those key pillars intact is again very important. So how would you elaborate on that?
We have used both the things, personalization as well as technology, to bring that thing in picture. So whenever any patient comes on any of the platforms at Pristine, right, one care is something which they get assigned with. Now, this care coordinator is someone who will take him through the journey. He's the one who will listen to the problem, and according to effort, will book the appointment with the doctor. Now, once the consultation is done, and suppose that patient needs a surgery, then as I said, that most of the patient have got like insurance issues and other stuff. So this particular person will work with the internal insurance team to get the insurance approval, right? Once the insurance approval is done, and once we know which hospital this patient has to get admitted, now the day of admission comes in, wherein this person will book the cab for this particular patient to pick him from his house to the hospital. Now, once the patient comes to the hospital, we understood that admission was a bigger problem, right? So once the patient reaches, there is something which we call as pre-booking of the patient. So once the patient comes at the hospital, at the admission desk, we make sure that they should not wait for like more than 15 minutes. They just have to do a little bit of formalities. Their rooms are all already booked so that they can directly go to the room. All respective investigations happens inside the room, and then the surgery happens. And during that journey, again, one person is there with the patient virtually, who will be available 24/7, so that in case they face any issue in the hospital, this person can be connected easily, and whatever is the problem can be resolved, right? Now, at the time of discharge also, like we keep an update about the discharge process, like where is it stuck, whether it's happening on time, or is it yet taking some more extra time, all that thing. Once the patient gets discharged, and when it's like we send them back home, like the cab services which we provide, then there is a feedback team who calls up the patient, right? And we also like take digital feedbacks, wherein we get to know how was their experience with Pristine. Now, there is a follow-up team who will call the patient up and will book a follow-up appointment with the doctor. Now, all these things are happening not just through manual or human things. There are technologies which we have adapted, Like if there are different tools, CMRs, CRMs are there, and there are like different applications which we have developed internally, so that everything is linked. Everything is there on one dashboard so that we are aware which stage the patient is. For the patient also, we have developed patient application wherein patient is aware which stage he or she is in. Like suppose he has to book his appointment, he will know the next step is to go to the clinic. Once the clinic doctor consultation is done, he will see the prescription. Like doctors are using electronic prescription EMRs and all. So he will get the prescription in the app. Now, suppose he has to go for the insurance, the patient will update all the insurance details in the patient application itself. Now he will get the whole detail about the hospital, which hospital he has to get, what is the name of the surgery, everything on the applications. He will know what the journey is going to be there in the hospital, and post that he will also know about the follow-ups, and the follow-up prescriptions can come over there. Garima, are you there?
I think she got
I think we lost her. She might come. Give me a moment.
Okay.
some connectivity issues. The meanwhile, till Garima comes, Mr. Santosh, would you like to talk a little bit about the patient journey and the continuous communication with patients? Oh, Garima is back.
Yeah.
Garima, I'll just let you step
Yeah,
into
thanks, Sudhanshu. Thank you so much. No, thank you so much. I'm so sorry there are
No
frequent
worries.
power cuts today because of the.
No worries, no worries.
So, Garima, yeah, thank you so much for helping us understand that part of the personalization, and I believe that the major stress has been, removed when it comes to the patient, because surgery can be overwhelming, and it is overwhelming. The thought of having a surgery, sends people in quite a fit, and I think the way you are dealing with that part of the journey is really commendable. And on that note, I would like Mr. Santosh to comment upon hyper personalization.
Yeah, so I think one of the big change what we are seeing in the healthcare industry is behavioral clustering. I think with a lot of data coming into picture, it has given us an ability to start cohorting patients group. So earlier we used to send mass emails going to all the people across whoever are registered on the overall thing from an education point of view. Now with data picked up very smartly, I think it has helped us with an ability to start creating cohort groups. What we can do is structure the content material. Whatever is relevant for a birthing lady, it can go to her. Whatever is relevant to a pediatric group can go to pediatric. Whatever is relevant to onco can go into onco. So that content management has really improved by leaps and bounds based on hyper personalization, as we call it in terms of the overall thing. It has also given us ability to slice the data based on pin code. So when we look at the reach element in terms of the market share, or when we start looking at patient population profile, the public health prevalence, whatever is coming from the region. So we are a data with a huge appetite for organization with a huge appetite for data. So most of our decisions are data oriented, and based on IT enabled approach, I think we have had an ability to improvise on the overall curated content for individual profiles of the people. That's a big one. Two quick examples what I would like to give you, Garima, in terms of hyper personalization. I think NCD has been a topic which is very near and dear to Apollo. I think the non-communicable disease profile, what we see, as our chairman always keeps on saying, it's a tsunami in the making in terms of this, which is unfortunate. Lifestyle diseases as we see in terms of this thing. So we invested a lot in terms of wellness part of it through health check. So earlier we used to do health check only for a year. So very recently we came up with an AI driven tool called as Pro Health, which gives a overall mapping of 3 years now for a patient profile. So it does not handpick the overall symptoms on the genetic indispositions only for the first year, but it also hands-hold them and takes into a journey of a curative stage. And as we always know for sure, that wellness management is anytime better than the illness management. The quality of life enhances, the cost of care is much more lesser from that point of view. Another important tool what we have leveraged quite well, we do a lot of corporate health checks. So based on our AI tool, what we do is aggregate data, which is known as a corporate scorecard. So if I aggregate that data, if say hypothetically 500 health check employees are coming from a particular corporate, This data tool gives me an ability to create a health check scorecard for the corporate. I can go to the corporate and say 40% of your people are suffering from back pain. 30% of your people are obese. So let me run a medical management program for you rather than you coming in sick or your patient getting into a cardiac eventuality or an orthopedic eventuality. It's better to catch the prognosis early on. I think from that point of view, it is very, very important to use these tools very meaningfully. And obviously, having a very strong, robust HIS system, hospital information system, gives us an ability to work on all these parameters. Another important element where hyper personalization has worked quite exceptionally well is 3D printing. I think with most of the cadavers and organ donations still at an infancy stage within the overall environment, I think we have seen a big adaptability in terms of the 3D printing tools where implants are being used successfully by most of our specialties. And I think it's coming in a big way in terms of this thing. And the last important thing, again, I think genetic indispositions, which has a long lasting impact, and it is not only confined to the patient, but from the family tree, from where it emanates from. So based on the genetic indispositions, our IT system gives us an ability to reach out and do a proactive assessment, because there the probability element of somebody getting into deviation of medical care is very high from that point of view. So all these kind of tools have really helped us a lot in terms of consolidating all these activities. And one paradigm shift, what we are seeing is earlier we used to worry as to what disease the patient has. Now the paradigm shift has changed and we are looking at what patient the disease has. So the whole thing of personalized care, as we keep on saying and harping, has started coming in the midway, and people are also well educated. They are well tuned. The flip side of it is Dr. Google though, but at least to a certain extent, they are well tuned to what needs to be done. They are aware about the kind of prognosis. They take second opinions, which is good and encouraging. In fact, as a healthcare provider, we also encourage people to take second opinion, because it's always good to be convinced in terms of what is the medical prognosis and what are the options available. So these are a few of the thoughts in terms of hyper personalization.
Right. And I think the scorecard that you mentioned is one scorecard that we all are, quite scared of. Mm-hmm. We don't want to see, what levels have gone up, how the weight has gone up, and and predicting things in advance, predicting the problem in advance is an important part of the story. Just this morning, I was reading about PCOS, that it is one of the most undiagnosed diseases in India. Very few people are aware about this problem and how it affects them mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I think that's a very important argument, Mr. Santosh. Thank you so much for that. And moving on, Sudhanshu, since he has talked about technology being such an enabler, such a powerful tool, and Dr. Prabal also talked about omni-channel. So how are you looking at AI-enabled omni-channel communication within the healthcare space, and how do you feel that this has the power to enhance patient experience overall?
Sure. It works both ways, actually. AI and technology has the power to not just make the patient journey smooth and seamless, but it also is a big support system for the healthcare providers themselves, right? Because there are so many things which can be addressed with technology without having any human intervention, so that the human energy and the human touch, or the limited human capacity that we have, can be saved for the really important aspects of patient care. So to that extent, technology has been a great enabler. At OzoneTel, we've been helping. There's some questions coming in already in the chat, so maybe I'm sure Ekta is making a note of those, and we can look at them later. So at OzoneTel, we've been making sure that helping our customers who are healthcare providers like Healthcare at Home and Portia and a few others, Dr. Lars Path Labs, etc., to make sure that they are able to respond to their patients' requirements in the fastest possible, most effective and most accurate manner, and also be available to provide the human touch when it's necessary. And we have enabled this during the COVID period through the COVID helplines that we were supporting with Healthcare at Home, as well as with other government organizations, and making sure that the patients are able to reach out to their providers, even during the lockdown, where the severest of lockdown was enforced in the country, when communication channels were broken, when physical access to medical facilities was restricted, and patients were feeling anxious and disturbed and frustrated and needed care. Technology came in very handy, where healthcare providers were able to stay in touch with their patients through technology without having to expose themselves to the risks of the infection, by making sure that there was a physical distance, the social distance as it was called, while still keeping in touch with the patients at the right amount of level. So we some of the ways in which we did this was we were able to help our customers, the healthcare providers, move their agents or move the people. As you know, we are a contact center services provider. We were able to move our customers' agents to work from anywhere model, from working from a physical facility or a brick and mortar facility of the healthcare provider, to be able to work from home within a matter of hours, without any drop in service, without any drop in data, without any drop in the analytics that they were doing, and in a very, very proactive manner. So that is one big aspect of technology that came into play, where customers were able to continuously access their providers, patients were able to access their providers without any drop or without any hiccup, in spite of the pandemic and in spite of the resulting lockdown. The other thing that we did was, with some of our healthcare providers, was there a lot of when patients are anxious and curious and they're waiting for test results, or they're waiting for some kind of diagnosis. Sometimes they burden the healthcare system with too many calls or too many messages, right? And a lot of times, in spite of the fact that, I've given my sample in the morning, I know the report will come at 5 o'clock in the evening, I start calling my provider at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. Is the report ready? Is the report ready? And the healthcare system, with its limited capacity, has to deal with that, right? So when technology can actually help in that kind of a moment, by identifying who's calling, and by providing them the right information at that time without human intervention. For example, if I'm calling a provider from my registered mobile number, using a CRM like Lead Squared, or any data interface that is integrated, that can actually figure out who's the caller, and then fetch the record from the system to see what the status of the report is, and convey that information to the caller without a human being to intervene. Now, in case the person has a more detailed query or something else, then they can use the IVR to reach the right human contact to provide that information. So this is one example that I wanted to share. I have a few more, in fact, quite a few examples and case studies which have come up during the pandemic, and I'll be very happy to talk about that. But, I'd like you to now maybe go to one of the other speakers to share.
Yeah, thanks, Sudhanshu. But you did touch upon a very important point, that patients do tend to, get overwhelmed at times and burden the healthcare system unknowingly, unintentionally. That's completely, that is not what they want to do, but somehow it happens in the process. So, Dr. Garima, since you're a doctor and you have had that sort of very intimate interactions with your patients, how do you look at this part of the story? Because whenever a patient is coming up to you with a problem, the first thing is that you try to have a conversation, make that person feel at ease, and then you begin the diagnosis and you come to the treatment part. But what is it that you look for in that moment that is something that you feel that has the potential to change the story for better for that patient?
As a doctor, I can say that any patient coming to the OPD will take the treatment from that particular doctor if they trust the doctor. So for a doctor to build the trust is something very important. So what I feel, doctors should be very, very transparent in telling what the patient is suffering with. What is the normal thing? What is the abnormalities which can happen? What are the causes to it? Explaining them in detail is something which is very important. They don't understand what is liver, what is gallbladder, how the internal eye looks like, nothing. I think what I feel like explanation to them by initially what I can say, I used to use diagrams and all, but now with the AI thing coming up, I think that can beautify the explanation part in the OPD consultation which the doctor does. So
Right.
when you explain, give them time, listen to their queries, solve their small, stupid answers, I think that is something which can build trust and which can help them take a better decision.
Right.
Because finally, it's in Pristine, we are doing surgeries. It's not a joke. Like, no one, as you said, there is a lot of fear. No one allows you to touch your body, right? You have to take proper consent, and you don't. No doctor wants to ill-treat the patient, right? So it's very important that patients should be 100% ready. Should be 100% confident before taking any treatment.
Right, right. And I think being on board, 100% on board with the doctor and the team, and also the healthcare provider, for both of them, one thing that is very crucial to the story is, to the narrative, is information, which Vineet highlighted right in the beginning, that, data and information, customer journey mapping, the entire thing is at the heart of the story. How do you convey and collect? How do you gather the right information at the right time? And how do you manage to convey that? So from that point of view, Vineet, how easy would you say it is to adapt to the CRM platform and other tools when it comes to healthcare industry? Since again, it's a different industry we are talking about. So there are the barriers, the challenges are also a bit different in nature, right? So how are you looking at that? And how much of a role do you feel that the adoption cycle plays in that part of the story?
It's a very interesting question, Garima. Thanks for asking this, because adoption is like a very critical and like most important aspect when we speak about a CRM or a platform. Now, if we have to understand the adoption and the pattern, we have to go back and understand that who are the user of this platform. Okay, so if you're talking about the CRM, it start with, again, I'll go to my first statement. It start with inquiry. So as Dr. Garima mentioned in her first instance, that they have designed the journey beautifully in such a way that everything can be sketched on the system, and you would be able to view that when inquiry coming in from different systems, right? So all the system, okay, there are multiple channels to generate your inquiries. Your inquiry can come from your website, from your chat tool, from your social media, from inbound phone call. It can come through like OzoneTel, IVR number as well. So now the system like Lead Squared. So Lead Squared, how do we handle this? We get integrated to all these sources to ensure that these inquiries are captured, and now these inquiries go to the people who have to respond to these inquiries. So their adoption is most important on the system. Okay, how do we drive adoption? First is, once we deploy, the time taken to deployment of a CRM or a platform with understanding of all the business process and the use cases, it is most important. And okay, once we deploy, okay, there has to be like multiple iteration of the training sessions. It's because and the system should incentivize basically the users. I mean, whether it can be call center, it can be the customer care executives, patient care like executives, or it can be even in case of a lab, it can be the field sales guy who is going to collect. So what sort of the usability or the UI that we are offering to these guys? So is it solving their problem in terms of increasing their productivity or efficiency? It is because this is the incentive for them. If I give them a system which seems very like easy, and on a single screen they would be able to do like all their tasks and activities, it means their efficiency is going to increase, their productivity will be increasing. So if these things are offered in the platform, and it is driven by the service provider, then definitely the adoption it reaches to like 98%, 100%. So I'll give an example as well. In like call center assisted acquisition, so we integrate with OzoneTel. Now a call comes in, like inquiry comes in. If the call is coming for the first time, the inquiry is kind of like autonomous. So like inquiry record get created. Now the agent or the counselor who is speaking, he has a single view. The call center and the CRM are married in such a way that the agent has a single view, and he would be able to put his comments or remarks on this system in a click. So I'm trying to help or we at Lead Squad are trying to help the users to increase the usability, simplify the work, and okay, give them a regimented, regimented cadence to complete their tasks and activities on a daily basis.
Right.
So that's when like adoption automatically increases.
Right. Right, Vineet. Requesting Devendra to please switch off your video, if possible. Yeah, okay. So Devendra, please switch off your video. Requesting the audience once again to please keep your videos switched off. Mr. Prasant, if you can please switch off your video. Yeah, thank you. So yes, Vineet, thank you so much once again for helping us understand that part of the story. And before we move on, we have one very elaborate and detailed question from Mr. Aravind Ramchandran. Let's take that up before we come towards the end of the discussion. So his question is, the massive availability of data can be used for effective treatment, better insurance management, and overall better health outcomes. That is good news. However, these lead to risks of discrimination in insurance and other assisted payment programs in healthcare. Since the data originates at the healthcare provider stage, how can these be addressed by hospitals? So if Mr. Santosh would like to take this up, or Dr. Colonel, Dr. Prabal, if you would like to take this up.
Yeah, a few thoughts on this. I think definitely the data, while it is patient data, the property is with the patient. I think there is a whole lot of confidentiality in terms of the patient data which is there. And most of the data, as we all understand, is demasked in terms of using for trials or any data purging or any kind of activities that we typically use for. So definitely the sharing of the data does not get linear to that extent. And I think we are not, as a system, we are not matured to that extent where we can definitely get into actual valuation, trying to customize policies which can be customized for a particular group. I think we are nowhere there, because I think 2 to 3 important aspects which Indian context, I would like to say, is getting into a transition effect, so to speak. From an Indian point of view, India's point of view, we have done a lot of efforts in terms of standardizing cost. Standardizing of care is still in work in progress. So I think the whole care journey in terms of having quality standard, outcome standards with lab, with standardization of those activities is yet to come in. So unless and until we have a regional database where our lingo is similar to what my competitors are talking, what I'm talking state to state, and unfortunately in India, healthcare is a state subject. So obviously the healthcare whole dynamics change from state to state from that point of view. So definitely there is a long way to go, but I think we are there. I think a few of the initiatives which are being undertaken, Ayushman Bharat, which is the great initiative undertaken by our Prime Minister. I think we are in that right direction, but it will still take another 3 to 4 years to really the system to be matured and start using this data more meaningfully. But definitely under no imagination, a particular patient will be compromised based on his comorbid condition or those kind of things. The law of de-averaging always works better in insurance, as we all understand. And I don't think we will get into that kind of myopic view for individual people at that level.
Right, right.
Yeah. So if I can add to it, Garima, I mean, very nice thoughts by Mr. Santosh. And in fact, the question is very interesting. That brings into totally different dimension to the discussion. Because big data, data analysis, how it manages in patient care adds up is a lot of thought is going around it, how we can leverage AI and data analytics. Today, we analyze data, what we consider as pertinent to what our queries are. But there's a lot of data. First of all, data protection is an important thing, and what happens to rest of the data. So that is where big data analysis comes up in the background. There are many, like as compared, relevant to the diagnostic laboratory, okay, we use only a little bit of data. Rest of all is in the background. There's some big research organizations who work on those data to find out over a period of time what is relevant and what is irrelevant. And why it happens is like in diagnostics, where pathology is more than now diagnostic into prognostic and predictive care. and into personalized medicine. So from that perspective, everything, all data is there in the system, right from the HIs to our limbs, everything is in the system. And as we get into digital pathology, molecular genomics, everything adds up. And there are certain scoring system for patient prognosis, patient outcome that are being also calculated. So it is, data today is one of the most exciting things which are there. And I'm sure as we move ahead, okay, that is where patient care will get more refined as we have a good analysis of all these data collated together.
Right, right. And we have another question from Mr. Rajat. Technology enables to scale. However, the downside of technology-based communication is lack of human touch. Patient who is seeking medical advice also needs emotional support extensively to adhere, retain, and gain trust. How can one scale effectively without losing the human layer of interaction and maintaining the standard of quality communication? So Dhanshu, would you like to take this up? And Vineet can add to it.
Yeah, and I think probably Dr. Garima can also add to this, because they are trying to their model is of reaching out to more and more people and through use of technology while retaining the human touch in a very, very sensitive area like surgery, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I want to say is, from a technology standpoint, we are absolutely conscious. We are a technology organization, and we always try to be at the forefront of technology by innovating, by creating new solutions, by making sure that artificial intelligence and other automation aspects are brought into the the element of design as far as our services are concerned, our products are concerned. But so for us, we are not really a patient care or healthcare organization. We are more of a technology organization. So our focus is always going to be that. But in our collaboration with the healthcare providers, what we have seen is that a hybrid works the best. You use technology for the areas which are less sensitive, which are automated, which are repetitive, which are more predictable, and you help the patient journey through an automated process. However, wherever it comes to any element of more seriousness or sensitivity or any kind of critical care, obviously the human care is relevant. And these are things which keep evolving with time. As technology evolves, even the models of patient care keep evolving. Some of you may remember that in the good old days when we were and I know good old days for me may mean something different and it may mean something different for a younger person. But I remember days when we used to have a family doctor, and even if somebody in the house had fever, the doctor would be called, and he would come home with a briefcase. He would attend to the patient. He would not just give a prescription. He would also hand over some medicines to be given. He would dispense the medicines right in the bedroom of the patient, and then while leaving, give instructions to the family members about the kind of care that has to be given to the patient. So it was completely human, in that sense, right? From there, I don't think, especially in larger cities, we can afford to have a doctor visiting us unless it's an absolutely critical issue. We are all used to now going to the hospital, going to the clinic, and consulting a doctor, or consulting them telephonically or remotely. So the model has changed. The same thing is going to apply to patient care. I think I saw a comment in the chat box that said that the healthcare organizations have to develop different journeys for different types of patients. So I can relate to that completely. For example, my ability to access healthcare or or reach out to my provider using an omni-channel or using different models is different from what my mother or my grandmother would be able to do, right? So there will have to be a different journey or a different process for them. So I agree with that point completely. I hope I what I'm saying is making sense to all of you. But as a forebearer of technology at OzoneTel, it is our job to make sure that we present the best of technological solutions for patient communication, for the patient journey, and make sure that that the journey is smooth, not just for the patients, but also for the providers, by bringing in efficiencies, by bringing in flexibility, scalability, and access to healthcare to more and more people across the country. Not just limiting it to a few chosen few or privileged few.
Right.
So,
Right, Sudhanshu. Yeah, Vineet, would you like to add to that?
Yes. I mean, thanks, Sudhanshu. I mean, okay, this was quite like enlightening. So with technology, I mean, evolution of technology basically. So I want to state that the technology is evolving, and it is evolving to help to serve people better. Right. When we talk about like digitalizations, why digitalization is happening across. So if you're taking healthcare an example, like CRM platform, okay, then cloud telephony, other tool, HIS systems, it is to ensure that we spoke about personalization. How do we ensure that we go to that personalized label and we empathize with the customer, empathize with the patient. So that that empathy can come like if we know about that patient. So these like informations are helping, and this technology is helping in getting that information to ensure that we empathize. And as Mr. Santosh mentioned, that with a lot of data coming in, he is able, or his organization is able to cohort it and then pass on the relevant communication and information to the group. Say somebody who, like there is a group of like patients who are getting treatment for cardiology. Now, like they would require all the information related to cardiology. So technology is helping him to segregate, to dice that data, send out all the relevant communication. Dr. Garima and Colonel Prabal also mentioned that it is technology which is helping them to ensure that the human touch is maintained. There is no doubt that technology cannot at all replace human touch, but technology can only help the enablers to serve the patient better. And to bring in all the relevant information that is needed to serve them better.
Right.
Dr. Garima can further add on to it.
Yeah, so what I can say is definitely automation will help. Like our government has also released health ID thing. Now, what I can say is definitely empathy you cannot take away. But, when you see a patient and like I always tell my doctors that when a patient is entering, you should know the name of the patient. A very small example. When you know the patient who is coming in and you just call them by their name, the trust level goes up, right? Other scenario is where you don't know the name of the patient, right? And you ask, what's your name? I think that's a different story. So when as a doctor, you are sitting and you know what the patient details are, right? It actually helps you better treat the patient, right? Better diagnosis can be made. A personalized treatment plan can be made, like all the history background of that particular patient, right? So all these things can, what Sudhanshu said, what Vineet said, I totally agree with that. But adding on to those points, I think that personalization, which is very, very important in healthcare, which cannot be taken away. I think at least for next 10 years, I don't think technology can take over the human touch, right? So I think that personalization will become more effective if we have more digitization in the system.
Right. And we'll take one more question here because there are time constraints. So yes, we'll take this question from Abhijit. It's a very valid question. In order to improve the patient engagement in diagnostic centers, which all activities can be carried out that would prove to be effective? Please advise. Usually patients tend to ignore the feedback links. What else can help? That is actually the case. We often ignore those feedback calls as well, and forget about clicking on a link and then going through all the questions, multiple choice questions. So Dr. Prabal, would you like to take this up?
Yeah, sure. The way we do it is we call back patients at random to find out a realistic, like when we monitor NPS score, we monitor it more realistically. Okay. And we call back patients, we take back, from the diagnostic lab, we don't really say patients, we say users. They can be patients, they can be wellness, they can be doctors. Okay, our collection centers, all of them are using the lab facility. So we take inputs from everyone. What is happening? How are we doing? And we have developed various mechanisms so that multiple different feedback we take. And obviously, how we try to address all these concerns is when there is a interface between a doctor and the patient or the various users in the name of CRM, call centers, front desk. Uh, we invest a lot of time in training them, motivating them, okay, orienting them, seeing that they practice. It is very important because randomly placing somebody to occupy a chair there really does not help in the long run. They have to be made, aware what is the role that they are playing, how sensitive is each call that they are receiving, what are the thoughts behind it, so that there's a human touch is not lost. And in case they cannot answer the query, they should escalate to me or any of my consultants. We get back to the concerned person and try to answer to the best of our ability. So if all these things happen, we really find that uh, overall, we try to improve ourselves. And another very important thing, what I personally have been practicing also, is at random, I test the call centers. I call up the call centers to understand what is the experience of the patient. Okay, we might say it's all going fine. I mean, if it's an outsourced agency, reports will be coming all fine. But is it actually fine? At random times, if I make a call to various places or I visit at different collection centers or something, I experience it myself. What is actually the patient is facing? Okay, in my reference lab, when I come in, everybody knows who I am. But in a collection center, they would not recognize me in person. So that itself gives a reality check. And overall, I find that it really helps out in the long run.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the whole objective of this discussion was to understand what does patient engagement look like for healthcare providers, and how do they intend, or how are they working towards building a holistic healthcare experience. And Dr. Prasant here has actually posed a question that I think all of you can include in your concluding remarks, because it's a very valid point that he has mentioned, and I'll just read it out for you all. So he says that patient engagement is a slippery slope in today's medical tourism space. Patient engagement is one of the most vital approaches of having and maintaining a satisfied patient base. Different hospitals have a different understanding of what patient engagement really is, which is very true. Patient engagement is a process where the patients invest in their own care. Patient engagement develops almost naturally when there constant and meaningful communication when there is constant and meaningful communication between the patient and the caregiver. So how does one face this challenge? So Mr. Santosh, if you could lead this part.
Sorry, I just missed the question. Can you?
Yeah, sorry. So he's talking about patient engagement being a very slippery slope in today's medical tourism space, and but at the same time, it's one of the most vital approaches of having and maintaining a satisfied patient base. But different hospitals have a very different understanding of what patient engagement really is. Patient engagement is a process where the patients invest in their own care. Patient engagement develops almost naturally when there is constant and meaningful communication taking place between the patient and the caregiver. So how do we, how are you looking at this challenge basically? Because the entire crux of patient engagement in itself is very different for different hospitals.
There is quite a lot in that question. I think it's elaborative in terms of this thing. I think a couple of thoughts on this. Again, when we talk about personalization, I think each and every segment will have its own unique nuances as to how and what better we can do. Medical tourism, again, is one of the very loosely used concept. Either we don't do justice to medical part or tourism part. I think even if we focus on international patients, so to speak, I think there are nuances because patient engagement and communication occupies utmost prime importance for international patients in particular. So
Right.
definitely there are nuances beginning with translator, the basic communication, which is the core crux of continuum of care. That gets compromised if the communication is not decoded in an appropriate manner through the translator or so on and so forth.
Right.
Obviously, apart from that, the whole family gets compromised because of the stay over here. Post-operative care becomes a challenge in terms of those kind of things. So from an engagement point of view, there are 2 or 3 aspects of looking at it. Definitely, there are individual dedicated people who look into this kind of team. Most of the hospitals now, and not only for international patient, for corporate also, there are unique corporate help desk, because every corporate also has unique nuances of their care or their continuum or documentation for that matter, or approvals, whatever are needed from that point of view. In most of the welcome sign, what we are seeing for most of the corporate is their clinicians are getting involved with payer providers now. So we see the CMOs or the RMOs or the GPs from the corporate sector would like to get an update from the hospital at periodic interval in terms of the progression of the clinical care that we provide. So all these are engagement tools where we definitely invest a lot of time. Somebody earlier also referred about during COVID times.
Yeah.
Communication was definitely a challenging element where we went into WhatsApp videos in terms of this thing, because that was very, very important, because attenders were not allowed at that point of time, and at periodic interval we get into that kind of isolation requirements which are mandatory and needed. So I think depending upon situation and the patient profiles which come into the system, definitely while we advocate very strongly that there is no discrimination of care, but definitely there needs to be a personalization impact. Whether it is for international, the overall things will be different, including the food, which forms an important component, the diet and the nutrition part, which again is a very unique and important part. And in India, again, it gets compromised because of the overall taste buds of the international patient and their families. And at times we also do get a lot of patients from Northeast region for oncology. So at times, obviously, the whole family moves along with the patient, and it is really ironical to see those families independent from their work and livelihood for 2 to 3 months. So obviously, in that kind of thing, the communication, the whole update, what we need to give, obviously gets into a separate, very personalized kind of thing in terms of this thing. And the bondage also, obviously, we have seen the bondage with the staff also evolves over a period of time. The more the longevity of care, I think the more staff is more informal in terms of understanding them, in terms of those kind of things. So it's a moving target from our point of view. We do make it situational changes depending upon the profile of the corporate or international patient or individual people for that matter also. But definitely we are very sensitive to those kind of needs.
Right, right. And I feel that to conclude, if all of you could highlight what key trends healthcare providers should watch out for with respect to patient engagement, that would be very helpful for the audience. Sudhanshu, if you would like to begin.
Yeah, so, as far as our CCAS services and CPAS services are concerned, some of the trends that we are seeing are like speech analytics, diagnosing the sentiment of a person, doing a sentiment analysis from a conversation that is recorded. So, for example, if a representative from a healthcare provider or an agent is taking a call, and there's an agitated patient or an anxious patient on the other side, and if the communication is not following the right trajectory, the speech can be analyzed by a supervisor. He or she can get an alert, and then they can intervene, or they can barge into the conversation and take care of it. So some of these things are definitely going to be there. So that brings in the element of automation along with the human touch into the aspect. Of course, the whole element of artificial intelligence, and more than artificial intelligence, the machine learning aspect, whereby you can provide a customer and reaching out to you through the omnichannel experience, solutions to some of the frequently asked questions, and the system keeps learning that by itself. So there are certain questions, and that's where machine learning is going to play a big role, because many patients suffering from the same illness would typically have the same kind of answers, and they would be raising the same kind of questions. So machine learning can actually help provide those answers, and that is getting refined as the time is progressing. So these are a couple of trends. Of course, there are many more that we are working on. We are continuously innovating in this space, and we'll be happy to talk about it in a more dedicated session.
Right, right. Thank you, Sudhanshu. And before I move on to our next guest, I would like to inform our audience that we also have a feedback link in the chat section. Ekta has put it there. So the feedback, we're requesting a feedback from you on the entire webinar, so that the idea is to keep on improving upon the content and what more we can deliver for a better experience for all of you. So that is the whole idea of that feedback form. Please make some time to fill it so that we get to understand what exactly are you taking home from this conversation today. So yes, Vineet, what would you like to highlight when it comes to some of the key trends that healthcare providers must watch out for? Because patient engagement, patient experience, I think these terms are relatively new. We have been talking about customer experience for a while now, but patient experience in itself humanizes the entire story to another level. So what key trends do you feel are non-negotiable at the time?
And so when we're talking about patient engagement, so today's patients, or in today's this ecosystem, the healthcare ecosystem, and the patients, how they are reacting towards each other. The patient expects the healthcare service provider to know them better. So when I say it's like know them better, as Dr. Garima mentioned, that when the patient is walking into the premise, the doctor or the person, if they address by the name,
right,
it start building that trust. Right now, if the existing patient who has taken service from a service provider, healthcare service provider, he calls to a number to book an appointment for something else, the person who is sitting at the other end should have all the details about him, that he's taking services or consultation for diabetes, and if he tells, or no, after booking the appointment, he just asks, sir, hope your sugar levels are on track, controlled. Now the conversation goes to a different tangent. The trust that is built in this conversation, it's because the technology is helping again the service provider to ensure that the empathy and the human touch is kind of enhanced to pass on a great experience to the patient.
Right.
So one is definitely like knowing the patient better.
Mm-hmm.
Second is when these the engagement, we're talking about patient engagement. So this is an ongoing, it's an ongoing process. Say somebody has taken a cardiac surgery from a healthcare service provider. Now, there will be several do's and don'ts. There will be a kind of a meal plan, there would be an exercise plan, there will be some physio plan. So one is you keep that patient engaged through your counselor for the follow-up checkup and all that. Second is, at the same time, you send out all the relevant communication to him. It is knowledge sharing with him, right?
Right.
This knowledge sharing, keep the patient engaged. So see, feedback, as we know that most of us, we forget to click on the link of the feedback. If the experience is not bad, if the experience has been bad, then all the customers, all the patients, they go on the feedback link, they post that I'm not happy, satisfied with this, I call that. If it has been average or above average, they tend to forget. But if you're sending these kind of relevant communications, they have that thing in mind that the hospital, the healthcare service provider, it's still caring about me. That care is kind of passed on to the patient.
Right.
So this sort of engagements are kind of must, and we should, and as per our experiencing with working with a lot of healthcare, both in specialty segment, both in some of the segment like super specialty, or say mother and child, we have seen that the marketeers of all these healthcares, they carve these kind of sequential these campaigns or conversation to ensure that the patients are engaged with them. Right. And at Lead Squared, from a platform perspective, we ensure that whatever it is needed from a platform or a feature perspective is offered to ensure that this happen at the level.
Absolutely, yeah. Dr. Garima, please share your final thoughts.
I think automation and digitization is the future, right? I think this will help deeper engagement of the patient with their doctors and thus leading to patient satisfaction. I think this will lead to seamless scheduling, rescheduling, or cancellation of appointments. It can give better or early response to queries. It can give better and personalized care. More timely and accurate diagnosis can be made, like as I talked about Health ID, which our government AHDM has launched. And at Pristine also we have launched creation of Health ID. So a better diagnosis, or what we say, we are saying precision medicine is coming up, wherein we say that every patient is unique, right? Maybe the problem state or the disease is same, but as per the age, the treatment option can change, or as per the comorbidities, the treatment plan can be different. So I think a better accurate diagnosis can be made and a better precise treatment plan can be given to that patient. I think consistency will come in. Error-free electronic health records will help, means getting the whole data in one place. Better feedback mechanism will come in, right? I think AI can actually help in getting better feedback from different patients, right? And feedback is something which can help you improve every day. I think that's the future.
Right. Dr. Prabal, please share your concluding remarks.
Yes, I think it's a very dynamic process which is there, and we have to keep on modifying, improving it as we move. I don't think there's one solution for all patients. Like in precision medicine, it is more personalized medicine. So similarly, when we attend to a patient, look at their needs, engage with them, it's more of a personalized solution that has to be done. It's not one solution for all.
Yeah.
But today, I mean, with different types of healthcare setups, expectations are quite high from the patients.
Right.
And especially if they are going to high-end hospitals or to a corporate lab, expectations are different. Rather, I would say even in a government setup, in a blood collection center, I can't say token number so-and-so come for blood. I'm expected to say the name, and that is where the connect starts off.
Mhm.
And yes, when I engage with them after the report is there, I say, okay, I have already taken out the previous report. That is where technology has helped me. And I give them the graph, the analysis. I'll say, as compared to your previous 4 or 5 visits, this is what your status is. The patient connects much better.
Mhm.
They know that, okay, this person has taken the pains to go through all my previous records. Okay,
Right.
that itself is very good. And I mean, obviously, I mean, the last word, the way I deal with it is, if there's no noise, nothing from the patient, that means everything is going on fine. But if a patient, whatever minor way it is, minor thought or minor escalation or whatever it is, there is some problem somewhere in the system. We must review it in a proactive manner and address it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Santosh, please close the session for us.
Yeah. So I think a couple of changes what we have seen post-COVID now, 2.5 years, I think the whole manner in which healthcare is provided and how healthcare is availed has undergone a sea change in terms of this thing. And this patterns and systems are here to stay for a while, as we all understand. So one of the major shift what we are seeing is that the point of care has shifted out of the hospital now. People are wanting to have facilities which are in the home premise, outbound of the hospital premise. The fear of infection with COVID and all this kind of element still obviously comes at periodic interval. So that point of care along with technology will be a big driving force in terms of this thing. Another important element from the Indian context for the coming years will be the aging population. And as we always keep on seeing the demand and supply mismatch between the healthcare providers and what get provided from a provider point of view, I think more and more outreach elements and virtual screening will take a precedence in terms of e-connects or e-ICUs or e-home care solutions, what we are looking into. So Apollo has already taken multiple initiatives in that, whether it is stroke management program that we have robotics in terms of this thing. We have also an enhanced connected care through sensor sheets. We are trying to get into a centralized module which can monitor the stay of the patient, especially for a hospice kind of management, which is unfortunately in the Indian context still not there. in terms of this thing. And two important things from a government point of view. One is the Ayushman Bharat and second is the National Digital Health Mission. I think this will be the game changer for India. I think obviously while we keep on talking population as one of the advantage, but that also acts as a deterrent in most of the times in providing accessibility to most of our citizens. I think these two are very powerful initiatives through the Prime Minister's office, and we will see it meaningfully impact the healthcare as we proceed forward. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Most importantly, for coming together and making time for this important conversation today. You have actually helped us break down the term patient engagement, because as Dr. Prasant also pointed out, it's a very slippery slope, and it does mean a different thing for different hospitals and healthcare providers. So I think breaking down patient engagement and understanding what exactly a holistic healthcare experience looks like is very important for us, and you have given us some great cues to follow and lead in the times to come. And thank you so much to the audience for such insightful and beautifully articulated questions, and most importantly for staying with us for so long. So I'll keep it short. Thank you once again, everyone. It's been a wonderful listening and learning from all of you today.
Thank you all. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ekta.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.